Hey there, deep divers. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're going way back to the 17th century, uncovering the origins of calculus.
Ooh, calculus.
Yeah.
It's more than just formulas and equations, though, right?
It's a story about two brilliant guys, Isaac Newton and this guy, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz.
This is going to be juicy, I can already tell.
Oh, it is. Trust me. It's a real intellectual showdown.
Well, I mean, calculus as we know it today, it didn't just appear out of thin air, right?
Definitely not.
It was a whole process, discoveries, rivalries, you name it.
Yeah, let's start with Newton, the superstar. But not the Newton we think of today. Let's go back to when he was a young guy, brilliant, a bit of a loner. Imagine him during the plague years in the 1660s. Like, talk about social distancing, right?
Yeah. Those were Newton's miracle years, as they're called. While everyone else was dealing with the plague, he's making crazy discoveries in optics, physics, and get this, calculus.
Wow. So while the world was on lockdown, Newton was inventing calculus.
He called it the method of fluxions, though.
Catchy. So why didn't he, shout it from the rooftops?
Well, publishing back then wasn't as easy as hitting send on Twitter, I guess.
True.
And then there was the Great Fire of London in 1666.
Oh, right.
Not exactly the best time to be an unknown mathematician trying to get published, I imagine.
No kidding. Plus, Newton, he was a perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
Always tweaking and refining his work.
Oh, absolutely. Always striving for absolute precision.
So while Newton's holed up, refining his method of fluxions, another brilliant mind enters the picture.
Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Now, he was a fascinating character, a philosopher, diplomat, and, as it turns out, a bit of a late bloomer when it came to math.
Late bloomer.
Didn't really dive into serious mathematics until his late 20s.
And he ends up co-inventing calculus.
It's incredible, right? He had this incredible intellectual agility, though. Once he got going, he was unstoppable.
So who was his Yoda, his mathematical mentor?
Christian Huygens, a leading scientist at the time. He took Leibniz under his wing.
I see, so he had a good teacher.
The best. Although even Leibniz had his awkward moments early on.
Oh, I sense a story coming.
He presented a new mathematical method to some bigwig scientists, all proud of himself, and then, well, it turned out someone else had already published the exact same method years before.
Ouch.
Yeah, a bit embarrassing. But hey, it seems to have lit a fire under him, pushed him to really delve into math.
That's a good spin on it.
Yeah, turn that setback into fuel.
So we've got Newton working away in secret, and Leibniz, after that embarrassing incident, diving headfirst into math. This is where the drama really starts, right?
Exactly. The big issue was who published first.
Well,
Leibniz published his work on calculus first in 1684, years before Newton formally put his stuff out there.
so Newton was first to the idea, but Leibniz beat him to the punch when it came to publishing.
Yep.
I bet that caused some tension.
Initially, they were actually pretty respectful, even exchanged some nice letters about their work.
So it all started out friendly.
Yeah. But academia, as you know, can get a bit cutthroat, especially when reputations are on the line.
Yeah, and I bet it didn't help when their supporters got involved.
You're telling me, friends who mean well, but just end up making things worse. In this case, there was this guy named Nicolas Fadio de Dulier, super close to Newton.
Like best bugs.
Oh yeah, inseparable.
Okay.
So close that Robert Hooke, another rival of Newton's, called Fadio, wait for it, Newton's ape.
Wow. Okay, Newton's ape. Subtle. What did this Fadio do?
Well, he published an article, didn't outright accuse Leibniz of plagiarism, but he heavily implied that Leibniz might have gotten a sneak peek at Newton's unpublished work.
Oh, so the seed of doubt was planted.
Exactly. And then, to make matters worse, another Newton supporter, John Keel, this guy went even further, directly accused Leibniz of stealing Newton's ideas in a Royal Society publication.
The Royal Society.
Yeah.
That's like the big leagues of science back then,
Okay,
right?
super prestigious.
So for Keel to accuse Leibniz in their publication, that was a serious blow.
Major blow. So Leibniz is understandably upset, wants to clear his name.
So what does he do? Take it lying down?
Nope, he goes straight to the top, appeals to the Royal Society for a fair hearing. Seems reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Except there was a teeny tiny problem.
Oh, no.
By this time, guess who was the president of the Royal Society?
Don't tell me. Newton?
Bingo.
Talk about awkward.
Right. So the Royal Society does issue a report. In 1712, let's just say, it heavily favored Newton, declared him the true inventor of calculus.
Poor Leibniz.
Yeah, what a mess. So Leibniz, even after that report, he tried to fight back, argued that he published first, criticized some of Newton's other work, even tried to downplay Newton's contributions to optics.
So he wasn't going down without a fight. That's kind of gutsy, going up against Newton like that.
It was, but sadly for Leibniz, he was kind of stuck out there in Hanover, far from the action, Not like being in London where all the scientific buzz was.
Right, like being at a party where nobody's talking to you.
Exactly, and his health wasn't great either, which didn't help his cause.
And meanwhile, Newton's fame just keeps growing. It's like a classic underdog story, but with calculus.
Yeah, there's definitely that element of drama. But here's the thing. Even though Newton seemed to win at the time, history has maybe been a bit kinder to Leibniz.
Really? You mean like a comeback kid kind of thing?
Well, think about it. The notation we use for calculus today, the symbols, the shorthand, that's mostly Leibniz's work.
Oh yeah, like the dx and the integral sign. I remember those from school. Pretty cool looking symbols, even if I didn't always understand them.
That's just it. Leibniz's notation, it wasn't just pretty, it was powerful. It made calculus clearer, easier to use. It kind of unlocked its potential,
So Newton's focused on winning the fame game, and Leibniz is shaping how we actually use calculus even today.
Exactly. His notation really took off. Some people even say that Leibniz understood calculus on a deeper level than Newton, closer to how we see it now.
Wow, so not only was he accused of copying, he might have even been a step ahead of Newton in understanding the whole thing.
It's possible, but that's the thing with history. It's never simple, black and white. It's full of layers and complications. New evidence pops up, perspectives change.
That's what makes these deep dives so interesting. Always more to discover. But we can't forget, Leibniz wasn't just about calculus. You mentioned he was a polymath, right? Like a Renaissance man.
Oh, he did so much. He was a pioneer in determinants, which are really important in linear algebra.
Linear algebra. I think I blocked that out of my memory. Refresh my memory. What's that about?
Basically, think of your GPS. It uses matrices, like grids of numbers, to figure out the best route. And determinants, which Leibniz helped develop, well, they're crucial for working with those matrices.
So thanks to Leibniz, I can avoid traffic jams. Now that's a legacy I can get behind.
Exactly. And there's more. He explored binary systems, the foundation of modern computing, like centuries before anyone even thought of computers as we know them.
This guy was way ahead of his time. It almost seems unfair that he's mostly remembered for that calculus controversy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what could they have accomplished if they had worked together, Newton and Leibniz combining their genius.
Yeah, that's a thought. But I guess that's how it goes sometimes, right? Brilliance, ego, missed opportunities. It's all part of the human story.
Yeah, it is. It shows us even the smartest people, they're still human with their own flaws and ambitions. But hey, ready for part 3? I'm dying to see how this whole thing wraps up. What happened to Leibniz's reputation? Did he ever get his due?
So last time we left Leibniz in a tough spot, what happened? Did his name ever get cleared?
It's funny how history works sometimes. As more evidence came to light, historians started to realize, hey, maybe those accusations against Leibniz weren't so accurate after all.
So they realized he got a raw deal.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, most scholars agree that Leibniz came up with his version of calculus on his own, completely independent of Newton.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
It's like a historical wrong being righted,
It is, and it reminds us to be careful about just accepting what we hear, even about history. There's always more to the story, Things aren't always black and white.
Right. Like with Newton being so secretive, maybe if he'd shared his work earlier, none of this would have happened.
Yeah, who knows, right? Openness is so important in science. It's how we build on each other's work, make progress. Who knows what we might have missed out on because of this whole rivalry.
It makes you think. Okay, so for our listeners out there, even if they're not math whizzes, what's the big takeaway from all this?
I think it shows us how important critical thinking is, We shouldn't just blindly believe what people say, even if they're famous or brilliant. Always question, investigate, make up your own mind based on the evidence.
Maybe a little humility wouldn't hurt either, right?
Absolutely. Both Newton and Leibniz were geniuses, no doubt, but they were also human, with all the ego and ambition that comes with that. Shows us even the best of us can make mistakes.
Wow, this has been a wild ride. Calculus, rivalry, big egos. Learned a lot about these two guys and how calculus came to be. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Just this. The next time you run into something complicated, whether it's math or science or even history, remember there's always more to uncover. Dig a little deeper, ask questions, and you might be surprised by what you find.
Great advice. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all this. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.